the children's director here at the City Church. So, Neil mentioned that we went to Colorado this week. There was 7 of us that went to in case you didn't know, the City Church is a Vineyard Church. We are part of a much larger organization, so we went to the National Vineyard Conference, and it was phenomenal. But in the 24 hours that we had in the car, we talked quite a bit about Honda Fits. Last week, Neil talked about his family's dream cars and all these huge cars that were awesome. Well, my husband is a mechanic. And I don't know if you know anything about mechanics, but if you meet a mechanic, they are going to be driving a $700 piece of junk that is typically falling apart. I mean, it's true. Go to a car dealership, look at all the cars in the front, and then drive around back. And look at you can tell who the salesman cars are and then who the mechanic cars are. So the Honda Fit, my husband recently was able to purchase a 2007? He gave me one of these, so it's not a 2007, but that's close. 2007-ish Honda Fit. And we were joking, he looked, when he purchased it, I'm not going to deliver this well. I don't tell jokes as good as Neil, guys. Just stick with me. When he purchased it, the salesman was like, this car is awesome. It's roomy. It's spacious. It can fit 5 adults with no problem. And my husband's like, wow, that's awesome. But where do I find 5 adults with no problems? That's a total made-up story. He did not. See, I did it. That's a total made-up story. He bought it from someone for $300. It was not from a car dealership at all. So here we go with the Honda Fit. And that just leads into today. We found that joke, and it was just perfect, because today I'm talking about being aligned with God. And my husband has been a mechanic professionally for almost 18 years, something around there. And before that, his dad was a mechanic, so he just always changed oil. So we have been together now for 23 years. So when I hear the word alignment, this is where my mind goes, to a car being aligned, right? It's just where my mind automatically goes. So then this whole thing with the Honda Fit, Andrew just raved and raved about the Honda Fit, and everyone in the car was just making fun of him, because this is like, he's a mechanic, and this is his amazing car, and he loves it so much. So, just thinking about all that and, being aligned, I don't know about you guys, but there have been times where I have been driving and I maybe sometimes hit some curbs. Sometimes. I don't know about you guys, but it's happened, okay? And it's never my fault. They come out of nowhere. But one of the things about being married to a mechanic is the next time Andrew goes to drive my car, we get in and we're driving, and I have literally watched the odometer before, less than a mile, and I see his body. What did you hit this time? Less than a mile, and he can tell that I've hit something and my alignment is off. It's a perk of being married to a mechanic. He can't do anything without him knowing, and he can just feel it. So I don't drive an 07 Honda Fit. I have a really nice car. I have a 22 Pilot. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Not too many dings or dents. Not too many. It's in really good shape. Obviously, being married to a mechanic, it is always in tip-top shape. He changes the oil. He does everything he needs to do. He takes it in to align it, probably more than he should need to. But, so we're looking at this car, and why? This nice car. It can go cross-country, no problem. It's in great shape. It's a new car. So why is it that when everything is so great, everything looks so nice, it's new, it's pretty, why is the alignment such a big deal? And why can he tell immediately? Like, what is it about being aligned that is so obvious? So when we think about that, and like, have you ever noticed that in your life or in the life of someone else that you're watching? Everything looks so good. You know, we have social media. Families look perfect on social media. It's so pretty. Everything looks good. Everything seems to be working well. You know, everything else, the engine's good, everything's great, but something is just off. You know, I feel like this is just such a great illustration of us trying to be not aligned with God. You know, like we can only do so much and make it look so good. Our families look so happy and put together, especially on Facebook. You know, I don't know about any of you. Me and my husband have 4 kids, and how many of you have ever taken the picture of, oh my gosh, smile right now and look happy? And then like you're like yelling at your kid, and then they look so happy and you smile and you post it and everyone's like, oh my gosh, your family's so cute. And you're like, yeah, you don't know what I went through to get that picture. You know, it just looks so nice. But this is, you know, none of this matters. None of the look or the feel or just like what's going on matters if we're not aligned with God. So we're going to look. Ooh, it's already 11:21. This was, okay, so we're going to do this real fast. Okay, so we're going to talk about what it looks like when to be aligned with God's plan instead of thinking we can do it on our own. A really great example in the Bible is the Israelites being freed from the Egyptians, being led into the promised land. So it was a long 40-year journey from them to be freed until they actually made it to the promised land, which is what God told them their end goal was. So just to recap for those that don't know the story, this began in the book of Exodus chapter 12 when the Israelites were departing Egypt. They first crossed the Red Sea when Moses was directed by God to split it. We know the story of splitting the sea, walking through, and then it coming back, and the Egyptians didn't make it through. After they crossed the Red Sea, the Israelites entered the wilderness of Shur, and they spent about 3 days without water there. Of course, there was a lot of grumbling and complaining during this time as they looked for water. They finally found water, but it was bitter, and they couldn't drink it. So once again, God told Moses, hey, throw a rock into the water and it's going to be drinkable. So he did it. He listened. God provided sweet, drinkable water. During this time, the Israelites faced many hardships, and they always responded with complaints. But God still provided. Through this whole story, he provides. Then they arrived in the wilderness of Sin, and here they faced another crisis, which was a lack of food. What did they do? They're complaining to Moses. They even went as far at this point as saying that they were better off in Egypt. They wanted to go back and be slaves. So at that point, what did God do? He provided manna, which was a miraculous bread-like substance that appeared every single morning. They were also provided with quail in the evening, so they even had some meat and protein. Like, God didn't just give them bread, he gave them sustenance, what they needed. When they went, after that, they went to Mount Sinai, which is where Moses received the 10 Commandments. While Moses was up having this amazing encounter with God, getting the 10 Commandments, the people were down building an idol. They were melting down their metals and building an idol to worship after watching all of these miracles right before their eyes. They were literally making an idol to worship. So even with all this complaining, even with them building an idol, in this point of scripture, it talks about how God was still declaring the Israelites to be his chosen people. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, even with how they were behaving and what they were doing and how they were living, God was still like, you are my chosen people. Please follow my laws. Like, please. So then they left Sinai, and the Israelites continued their journey toward Canaan. Once they reached Canaan, they sent 10 spies out to look at the land. 8 of them came back and were like, oh no, there's giants in this land. We can't have it. 2 of them were like, nope, it's good. We can do this. God has promised it to us. But the people listened to the 8, and they were like, nope, we can't do this. We need to go back to Egypt. Once again, they said that. We need to go back to Egypt where it's nice and safe, because those were great living conditions. So God's response to this was to decree that this generation, except for the 2 faithful people who were Caleb and Joshua, no one would enter that promised land until that whole rebellious generation died off. So this took us all the way to the book of Numbers. This was a 40-year journey of just watching them. And during these 40 years, the Israelites faced numerous challenges, including rebellions, plagues, and then divine punishments. Yet God continued to provide for them through manna, water, and his holy guiding presence. During the day, he was a cloud to keep them from being too hot, and at night, he was a fire to lead them on. But they were still leaning on their own understanding and not trusting what God had for them. They weren't aligning with God's plan, even though it was so clear and in front of them. They still were not choosing to surrender and align with God. So, and this was exactly what it looks like to be not aligned with God. The fact that they stated multiple times that they wish they were back in Egypt literally blows my mind. Like, they were longing for chains and bondage. That's what they were wanting after seeing all of this and being part of all of this. That's what they were wanting. And then, like, when you think about it, they built an idol to worship because they didn't have anything else to worship. They didn't have this God going before them and doing miracle after miracle, so they had to make their own idol to worship. God was there. He had freed them. He had brought them to safe resting places, and he had met all of their physiological needs. He had done it all. So, what does this look like? What would this story have looked like if they had aligned with God? This is what it would have looked like. The Israelites departed from the Egyptians, and they first crossed the Red Sea when Moses was directed by God to split it. When the Egyptian army attempted to follow, the waters returned and swallowed them up, and they were free. After crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites entered the wilderness of Shur. They spent 3 days without finding water, but knew God would provide. When they finally reached the water, it was bitter and undrinkable, but Moses once again was directed by God to throw a piece of wood into the water, making it sweet and drinkable. The Israelites were grateful, thankful, and knew that this was from God and that he was their provider. Next, they arrived at the wilderness of Sin. They couldn't find any food, but had remembered what God had done, and they were patient and faith-filled. God provided manna, which was a bread-like substance that appeared every morning, and he even gave them quail for protein and meat. They then camped at Mount Sinai, where Moses went up to receive the Ten Commandments. While Moses was getting the Ten Commandments, back in the camp, the people stayed, sharing stories of how faithful God had been this entire time, and knew that they were being declared as the chosen people. After leaving Sinai, the Israelites continued their journey toward Canaan, and once they reached Canaan, 10 spies went to check out the land, but they came back acknowledging that there were giants in the land, but they knew God was with them. The Israelites entered the promised land, took what was given to them by God from the giants, and this all took approximately 11 days. Geographically, from where they were to where they went would take about 11 days. And you know what's interesting about these two stories is the only difference is how the people responded. God was still God. Nothing changed. He performed miracles in both stories. He kept them safe. He wanted the best for them and didn't stop for 1 minute doing the things that God does. The people and their responses to the situation is what made the difference between 11 days and 40 years. It's what makes life easier and more fulfilling. It's not to say that they still didn't come up with any struggles. Nowhere in the Bible does it promise you that you won't have struggles. But what it does promise is God is there. And God was with them in both of these scenarios. But in the second scenario, they chose to align with God and what he had in store for them. God is really, really big. And he has a plan and a purpose, and it will be carried out. We have to decide if we're going to be part of that or not and what that looks like. We get to make that choice. The Israelites got to the promised land either way because that was God's plan. That's what God had called would happen, is that they would get to the promised land. And they made it there. But it still came to fruition. But it could have been so much better and easier if only the people had chosen to step out and surrender and follow what God had and had faith in what he had for them. So I asked my husband, which was a silly thing to do, what happens when a car isn't aligned and it's not fixed? He started going off. And I said, no, stop. I said, easy terms. The tires go bad. When the tires go bad, when your car's not aligned, it's going to wear on one side of the tires, and you're going to have to buy new tires over and over. He called it excessive wear. I'm not a mechanic, but I know tires are pretty important for a car. And if you're having to replace your tires all the time, man, that's a big deal. Do you guys know the price of tires? They're really expensive. It costs a lot to replace tires. The other thing that happens when your car isn't aligned, I mean, I'm sure there's lots more, but these were the two he gave me when I told him to calm down. It can also cause instability in the car, like a drift or a pull, in spite of where you are trying to go. No matter how hard you grip the wheel and try to hold it straight, there's always going to be that slight pull. Mine's typically to the right, because that's the tire I hit those curbs on, so that's the way my car goes typically. But this is exhausting, especially on a long car trip. And life's a long car trip, right? We're all on a long journey. And the more we pull and try and fight it, and the more the cars pull, and that's exhausting. And it just makes me think of the Israelites in the wilderness for so long, how exhausting. 40 years as opposed to 11 days. Man, what a tiring trip. And it just needs constant attention. Isn't this what we do, though? We fight and we pull, and we think that if we try just a little bit harder, put in a little more effort, things will straighten out and become easier. The real issue, though, is that we need an alignment. And until we get that done, it's going to be a constant battle. I don't know about you guys, but I'm always trying to work harder. If you work harder, if you do it better, if you just put in a little more time, it'll straighten out, right? Because we can do that. But man, you cannot will your car into alignment, just as we cannot will our life into our own alignment without God's help. So what do we do? How do we do this? How do we get there? One, we allow God to lead us and let go of control. For some of this is easy, and for some of this is a battle of a lifetime, especially when there's so much weight on you to be in control all the time. You feel like you're always making decisions to keep things moving. It's up to you to get all of these things done and taken care of. That might be true when it comes to, what's for dinner, making that doctor's appointment, but it's not true when it comes to life. God has designed us to be in relationship with him and trust him to carry us through. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he'll make your path straight." Oof. How hard is that? And I don't know. I feel like every time I preach, I talk about what a control freak I am. Clearly, it's something that God is really working on. But man, giving that up. So we're on this trip, right? And I really realized something about myself that a couple of the guys in our group so graciously alluded to. Man, I'm a backseat driver. Don't miss that exit. You're not in the right lane. I feel that if I don't do it, it's not going to be done. Can anyone else? If I don't do it, it's just not going to get done. So I have to do it. But when we break this verse down, trust in the Lord with all your heart and not your own understanding. God knows what lane we need to be in, and we've got to listen. We may think we know. I know a better way to get where we're going. Why are you taking, we stayed at a hotel, and the church that we were at was 10, 12 minutes away. And every time, they would take a different way to get there. I already knew the best way to get there. I already knew. And every time we would get in the car, because there was 7 of us, and everyone rotated driving, and the new person would get in and go a completely different way. Like, what are we doing? Why are we not? Like, I know what lane I need to be in, and I know what way I need to go. But that's not how it works. When we submit to him, he will make our paths straight. That's not our job. Number 2, give God your best. Your time, your thoughts, your prayers, everything you do it like you're doing it for God. Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. When we have all the focus on doing things for God and not for those around us, it's a whole new ball game. Imagine doing your job for God. How many of you in here have had a boss that's a little more on the difficult side, and it makes you maybe not want to do your job as well as you could, or you know you should, because you're like secretly sticking it to the man? But like, imagine doing your job for God. Like, I'm not doing this for my boss. I'm doing this because God has called us to be excellent in what we do. Imagine parenting your kids for God, not for the looks of what other people will think, not for the picture-perfect Facebook post, but for God. I am parenting these children because God has given them to me and entrusted me with them, and I'm doing this for him. Imagine working on your marriage for God. They were wrong. I was definitely right. I shouldn't have to be the one to apologize. I'll apologize when he does first. Imagine working on your marriage and doing what you should because you know it's what God would want. You're doing it for God. How different would our lives be, and how different would our focus be? And when your focus is different, that's where your alignment will be. We are now heavenly focused instead of earthly focused. And this will only bring us straighter alignment with God. And 3, ask God to align your thoughts. It seems so simple, but we get caught up in our plan and what we want out of life. We have a vision of what we think it should look like. But did we even ask? Did you even ask? How many times have you prayed, hey, God, I really would like this, but you know what's going on. Lead me to where I need to be. Matthew 6:33, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So this is 2-part. We are seeking God in what he wants, not what we want, not what we think we need, but we're seeking God in the kingdom, and all of these things will be added to you. It doesn't say some of these things. It doesn't say maybe a few things here and there. All of these things will be added to you. And what does that mean, all of these things? It means all of the things that God has for you. And who doesn't want what God has for them? They're being offered. They're there. How do we get there? We seek the kingdom of God and we ask. The Israelites never stopped to ask what God had in store for them. And there was never a surrender to God's plan. He has so much in store for us, but we have to ask what it is. Darren, if you want to come back up. So I just want, as Darren comes up and plays a little bit, for you to just really think about what areas in your life are you needing alignment, and what areas of your life are you holding on to? Because once again, you can't do it all. You just can't. But the amazing thing is you don't have to. And we need to live in that freedom of we don't have to do it all, because there's someone who wants to do it and is way better at it than us. So there will be some people up here praying. If you all want to stand and we can pray. If you would like prayer for that or for anything, I encourage you to come up. Father God, we just thank you so much for being our alignment and choosing a relationship with us, God. I just pray right now over a spirit of control, the God that is just lifted and that we are able to surrender wholeheartedly to you, that we trust you and we know that what you have in store for us is more than we can even think of. It's bigger than we can even dream, God. And that we're just able to let go of that and trust you.